Greetings. Happy New Year, almost Happy New Year, depending on where you are. Welcome to Heart and Mind. I'm Dr. Dina McMillan, and it's going to be no surprise to you about the topic this week if you've been paying any attention at all to the social media. So I decided to call it Shake Up Without a Breakup. So let's get started. Now, you do know that I live stream every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that's U.S. Eastern Standard Time. That's 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 Mountain Time, 5 p.m. on the West Coast, and you can watch the live stream here on X, on Daily Cloud, on the Rumble site, and Daily Cloud pages on Facebook and Getter. Now, if you're on X or Facebook and you want to add some comments or some questions, please sign in and I will answer them during the show. I want to thank you for all of you who are like me. I don't know about you, but I don't tend to go out on New Year's Eve. For me, New Year's Eve is about quiet reflection on what I want to leave in the current year and what I want to bring into the new year. So I don't normally go out. So if you're one of the people, for whatever reason, who decided to stay home, thank you for joining me today. Now, I am a social psychologist, and you'll notice I use slides in my shows. I don't want you to think I'm like Sheldon on The Big Bang Theory with his wooden portrayal of fun with flags. No, the reason I do it is because social psychology studies how we learn, how we're influenced, persuaded, manipulated, coerced, indoctrinated, and even brainwashed. And because those studies are so extensive and talk about how our brain works, whether we recognize it or not, studies have found that if you see relevant imagery when you're getting information, you're more likely to remember that information. So I'm hoping you find this show useful, but it's even more useful if you can use the information when you need it. So thank you for joining me for this. And I want to also ask you, please support Daily Cloud's efforts. And you can do that by ordering the Pfizer papers on Amazon. They feature the latest analysis of the Pfizer clinical trial documents, which is key information. We all went through so much. Some of us are still going through it. The vaccine for COVID-19 is still being offered, is still being promoted, is still being demanded by some workplaces. Find out what's really going on underneath the surface by going on Amazon and getting your own copy of the Pfizer papers and finding information that Pfizer wanted to keep legally keep secret for 75 years. Find out what they didn't want you to know. Now, today, as I said, if you've been watching social media at all, you've been seeing a lot of mix-ups, a lot of arguments, a lot of anger, a lot of discussions. So I changed the topic of what I was going to talk about today. And again, like last week, drew some information from the program I developed called Healing the Rift. Now, this is a program that I offer to schools, to organizations, to law enforcement, to anyone who has a very diverse workforce or group of people that you need to be able to turn into an effective team. And unlike diversity programs, unlike the anti-racism programs, there's no woke principles in my program. No talk about privilege, no making white people feel bad, none of that. Solid science, solid social psychology, neurology, neuro-linguistic programming, anything we can use to help make it easier for people to work together well without people being demanded that they give up their core principles and values, which has been the case for more than 20 years. Only the left wing, what is now known as woke principles, have been supported in our workplaces, in our TV shows, in our schools. No more. This is 2025 now, and it's a whole new day. Healing the Rift will help you do that. So I used some of the principles because I thought, yeah, these are some things that people need to know going into the new year. I want 2025 to be better in every way that I possibly can for you and for everyone else. And we had what is known as the tech bros, Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, talking about legal immigration. We're not talking illegal immigration. We're all on the same page about actually mass deportations of illegal immigrants, of not rewarding people for entering the United States and working in the United States without legal permission. We're all on the same page there. But when it comes to legal immigration, Vivek made a comment about getting people from India because he implied the culture in the United States produces people with substandard abilities and work ethic. Oh my God. Smacked a hornet's nest. And then Elon got involved and things got ugly. Yeah, we need to talk about how to do this. So for today's episode, we're going to discuss how to disagree with someone on a point of principle, something that matters, without shattering your relationship. And I think most of you can agree that this is something that we could all use. Don't you think so? Now, I wanted to also talk to you about something else. Most people know that staying hydrated is essential to nearly every bodily function. But 75% of Americans still don't consume enough fluid daily. Now, if you're like me, health is one of the big priorities for the new year. So let's talk about this. As we age, our natural bodily changes make staying hydrated even harder, especially without coming across artificial additives or excess sugar. That's where Native Path comes in with extra help. Native Path Hydrate isn't just another drink mix. It's a thoughtfully designed formula packed with BCAAs and all 9 essential amino acids to help with muscle recovery and overall vitality. Plus, it's completely sugar-free and 100% natural, and the flavors are wonderful. With their Native Hydrate product, you can fuel your body with essential electrolytes at the cellular level for overall vitality. And unlike other hydration drink mixes that are designed for marathon runners, so they contain upwards of 1,000 milligrams of sodium, Native Hydrate contains just 230 milligrams of sodium for optimal daily hydration. It's free of artificial flavors, sugars, and dyes, and it's only 5 calories per serving. Right now, you can get up to 44% off just for being a listener to our show. Every order comes with a 365-day money-back guarantee, 2 free gifts, plus free shipping. Visit nativehydrate.com/dailyclout to see what Native Hydrate could do for your health. Again, that site name is nativehydrate.com/dailyclout. Now, 2025, yay, it's finally here. We have been going through it for the last 5 years. While we all know the challenges we faced since 2020 with Biden installed in the White House and the changes he made to laws and culture and So many questions about the legality of that election, the economy tanking, supplies being held up purposely, mandates for COVID vaccines without sufficient testing. It's been exhausting. But in spite of that, we combined and held together enough to get Trump back in the White House for 2025. That's a big deal. And we should all turn around and give ourselves a pat on the back. It's going to be a struggle, though. Realize there's a lot to do, and they seem to be burning things up as they go out. Every time I look up, how about you? There's billions more going supposedly to Ukraine or to this or to that. Nothing for the people in North Carolina, nothing for the people in Ohio, nothing for the people in Maui, only for offshore things. All of these programs for foreign countries and nothing for our own people. Before it ends, they're making it excruciatingly painful. But take a deep breath. It's time to be a bit optimistic. Except, okay, yikes. I would say Elon Musk, whom I admire enormously, stepped on his tail when people gave him pushback, he and Vivek, about legal immigration. Elon, as you know, is originally from South Africa. He's an immigrant. Vivek Ramaswamy's parents are immigrants, and he's always talked about bringing more immigrants from India. We don't really care where they're from. Most Americans just don't want to fill our country with foreigners, and they don't quite get that. In fact, Elon got really angry, and if you can see on your screen what he said, the reason I'm in America, along with so many critical people who built SpaceX, Tesla, and hundreds of other companies that made America strong, is because of H-1B. Sorry, these companies did not make America strong. They increased our profit margin. They were valuable. But America was strong before they came. And if they all packed up and left, we'd still be strong. So I disagree with him on that. And a lot of other people did. And then he said, take a big step back and F yourself in the face. I will go to war on this issue, the likes of which you cannot possibly comprehend. Now, before you immediately say, okay, he's on my excrement list, I'm never supporting that guy again, ask yourself, have you ever said anything when you were angry that you later regretted? Have you ever drunk texted someone either saying, you're the worst partner ever, why did I ever go out with you, why do I ever marry you? Or, I know you're my ex, but I never got over you, I still love you. You ever done any of that? Ever said something when you were angry? Now, I don't have temper tantrums anymore. But when I was younger, I had a terrible temper and a sharp tongue. And I would often say things when I was angry that I would regret by the time the last words came out of my mouth. But once you say it, once you text it, once you write it, you can't take it back. So what do? I want to talk to you today in both about your personal life and the political sphere, how we can all learn to disagree without completely alienating each other. And I hope somebody sends this to Elon. I love him. I admire him. He has enormous courage. I keep learning in my life. I hope he does too. I want him to take a lesson from the fact that he got so mad and said mean things instead of taking a step back and just waiting. So let's talk about that. Now, before we do, I have to tell you, I had the benefit of a friend named Mal. Hi, Mal, if you're watching the show, who's a financial advisor. So I knew about this probably before a lot of you did. So listen up, because increased tariffs on our trade partners, tax cuts, and regulation changes. Learn why gold is a viable diversification tactic now more than ever. Birch Gold, the only gold company I trust, is releasing their ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. To get your free copy, along with Birch Gold's free information kit on gold, text Daily Clout to the number 989898. Here are the facts. The national debt continues to increase. Our interest payments on the national debt also continue to increase. Gold is still your hedge against a weakened dollar. And Birch Gold is still the company I trust to help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. Text Daily Clout to 989898 for your free copy of the ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era. There's no obligation, only information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, countless 5-star reviews, and thousands of happy customers, including me, you too can trust Birch Gold. Text Daily Clout to the number 989898 today. Now, let's get into the specifics. How to discuss important topics without losing your cool. And as always, these are easy tips anybody can use. Keep it simple, stupid, the KISS principle, or what Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. I take that to heart. So here we go. And by the way, in case you're wondering, I am not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm not a hypocrite. So I will never suggest something for you that I haven't actually put in place myself. So tip number 1, I want you to pay attention to how you react if a tough topic is raised, or how you reacted if you saw that post by Elon either just now, or if you read it before, or if you saw what Vivek Ramaswamy said about our culture. Were you completely angered by it? Where did it hit you? See, the self-awareness, most of us don't think about it. When you come across conflicting information, when the woke start coming at us, where do you feel it? Do you feel it in your gut? Sometimes it can feel like you're physically getting hit in the gut. Does your heart start racing, or does it kind of ache? Do you get a headache? Some people get a headache either in the back of their head or right here. Where do you feel it? Pay attention to that, because that lets you know you are in a very heightened state where this issue is concerned. And if they're introducing the topic, or if you come up with something, you're talking to somebody and they have Trump derangement syndrome, and you bring up Trump, or you talk about some of the things going on with gender ideology in the schools, or any other topic that's very controversial for one side and not another, how does the other person react? If you look at them, do they seem to be having, do they seem to be having those physical reactions we just talked about? Are they getting that feral look in their eyes and steam coming out of their ears? Are they reacting immediately without even thinking about it? Do they immediately just punch back without thinking? That can be a really challenging situation. And I want you to understand something. It's not because either one of you are wrong per se. It's just our core beliefs are not just stored in the front part of our brain, in our neocortex, in the logical, rational, problem-solving part of the brain. They're stored in our minds and our bodies. They're stored in different parts of the brain. They're stored in our gut. So the vagus nerve connects the gut with the brain. And that's why those gut instincts, I keep telling you to pay attention to gut instincts. That's why, because it actually thinks. Your gut actually thinks. It sometimes will pick up perceived threats before you do. And speaking of threats, conflicting worldviews can feel like a genuine threat, like tigers coming at you and monsters under the bed. It really matters when you're dealing with. Okay, let me figure this out. Let me just try that again, just in case you didn't hear it. Winter is here, which also means it's sick season. Sinus infections, strep throat, upper respiratory hacking, yuck. Everyone is traveling and passing it around. But guess what? You don't have to deal with it this year. Why? Because there's a little blue case that has your mobile urgent care. It has ivermectin, Z-Pak, amoxicillin, and 6 other prescription medications at your fingertips. Thanks to the wellness company's medical emergency kit, you can tackle anything severe your body comes across without ruining your time with family or winding up in urgent care. This kit cuts through the red tape by allowing you to take control of your health versus being reactive and inconvenienced during precious family time. You don't need a gatekeeper because their medical board created a guidebook that outlines common treatments for UTIs, strep throat, bacterial infections, respiratory illnesses, and more. All it takes is filling out a digital intake form, and your kit arrives at your door in 1 to 2 weeks. Live your life with peace of mind this winter season. Order your kit now by heading to Daily Cloud Health and using the code Dr. Dina to save up to $30 off plus free shipping. I love free shipping. USA residents only. Now, when we're looking at what to do with regard to handling arguments, let's get back to the core topic we're talking about today. If you want to handle difficult subjects, if it's important, wait until you're both calmer. Ask a really important question you may not even have thought to ask. Is there something about this you want me to hear or to understand? And then stop and actually listen to what they say. Now, you do have to be careful about manipulation with this, because sometimes if it's a topic that impacts both of you or something the other person really needs to understand, it's a life issue, sometimes what they'll do is just keep getting so upset that you drop the topic. You can't allow that to happen. If they continue to do that, ask, more than once, is there something about this you want me to hear or understand? If they just keep pitching a fit, then you go back and quietly consider what your role is going to be. If there's something that needs to be taken care of, for instance, and every time you bring it up, they hang up on you, they won't talk to you, they walk away, they change the topic, they pitch a hissy fit and make a scene, then you decide, okay, if they don't handle this, what am I going to do? And then you tell them. If we're not able to discuss this and reach a decision, here's what I'm going to do. And always with the integrity that we talked about you're going to have this year, where you do what you say and you say what you do. If you tell them you're going to do something, if they don't cooperate, you have to do it. But they need to feel heard. Most people want to feel heard and understood. And for both of you, get into the habit of not making choices, not making decisions while in a heightened state, or I would add to that, see, I don't drink, so I didn't think about this, but while you're inebriated, I was thinking about all the people that have talked to me about all the troublesome drunk texts that they've sent to current and former partners that I was joking about earlier. Get into the habit of paying attention to your body, assessing how you're feeling physically, emotionally, and telling yourself, I'm too upset now, I'm too raw right now. Let me calm down before I decide what to do. Now, also keep in mind, you are always responsible for what you say and do. No excuses. You can't say, well, I was really upset, or I had a bad day, or I drank too much when I did it. Guess what? Welcome to adulthood in 2025. You are always responsible. Take your permission back. See, if you're giving that excuse to someone else about your bad behavior, you're also giving that excuse to yourself. And you don't want to do that. From now on, you want to tell yourself, I do not have permission to misbehave no matter how provoked I get. And then act on that. And if you slip up, get back on the horse. Here are some ways you can calm yourself down. Practice mindfulness. What is mindfulness? It's really just presence of mind, taking deep breaths, assessing how your body feels. You can do mindfulness. You can go on Spotify. They have mindfulness walkthroughs. You can go on Google. Mindfulness. They'll have people, YouTube will have people walking you through mindfulness exercises. So this is something you can incorporate into your life. I know I used it a lot when I was locked in my house. I was in Melbourne, Australia during the COVID lockdowns, which is why I moved from Melbourne, Australia. But it was intensive for months at a time. We were not allowed out more than 1 hour. We weren't allowed to go into anyone's home. They were not allowed to come visit us. Everybody had to wear a mask even outside. Very authoritarian cops would stop you and ask your ID to make sure you weren't more than 5 kilometers, which is about 3 miles from your house. And this would go on 6 weeks 8 weeks, and then they drop it for a little while, and then they start it again. As far as mental health goes, it was extremely challenging. So the mindfulness I practiced kept me sane. I also took that 1 hour and I would go for a walk, rain or shine. I got up at dawn and I would walk. I would pray. Now, you can also play a video game. I don't have any video games, but you can do whatever you need to distract yourself from that heightened state. As long as it's not something unhealthy, raiding the refrigerator won't help you. Okay, that's not going to get you out of that heightened state. And in fact, I've seen jokes, just as a little aside, I've seen jokes where people have been putting pictures on their fridge of a disapproving Bobby Kennedy Jr. to keep themselves from eating junk food out of the fridge when they're emotional. Distract yourself, calm yourself, wait until you calm down before you make any choices or decisions, and that's positive or negative. If something sounds great and you want to sign on and do it, and you get all excited about it, that's also a heightened state. Don't forget, it's not just negative. Now, also consider something that I think people don't really think about. When this person is coming at me with this alternative perspective, are they making any valid points? Is there anything that I missed? Is my perspective too narrow? Am I missing something? If you do, yeah, you're human. Guess what? We all tend to get tunnel vision especially if we have a lot of experience or a very emotional experience or a tough experience in an area, we focus everything on it. But I always explain it like this: tunnel vision. If you are fully able physically, you will tend not to notice if you go somewhere that does not have wheelchair access because you don't need it. If something doesn't touch your life directly, it's too easy not to think about it. Now, if you want a really great example of someone doing this, Jackson Katz, who I actually met, and I was totally fangirling, but I practiced through being a social psychologist and talking to thousands of people professionally. I practiced the calm, cool phase, but I was totally fangirling. I love his work. This book is fantastic. And when he teaches courses on this, he explains even in the book that he would have young university students or high school students, and he'd say, okay, I want only the boys to answer this question. I want only the men to answer. Give me a list of what you do when you wake up in the morning so you won't get sexually assaulted. The guys usually laughed, and somebody usually pipes in and says, I don't go to jail. Ha, 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 ha. Then he asks the women, and they start with, I wear this. I park my car here. I travel to my car into my house with my keys held a certain way. I don't go here. I don't do that. I don't make eye contact when I'm walking down the street. The list is extensive. And these are decent guys. I'm not saying these are hard-hearted guys, but because this is not their world, there was really crucial information that was being missed. And they look and go, we never even thought of that. So I want you to think about that as we go through and as we talk about the tough topics that we're going to have to discuss in 2025 as we take the Trump ideals, the policies, from theoretical to factual. It requires input from us. After all, we voted him in, and we voted in a very highly participating citizenship. We didn't ask for them to make all the decisions and us just to sit back and nod. So here's another example for you to make it easier. What did I immediately, now this is not even thinking deeply, and I'm sure some of you can contact me with wonderful things that you want to say that I missed in this. But the first thing I noticed was with the immigration argument, and see if you thought of it too. Now, first of all, I noted how upset Elon got and that he mentioned that he came in on an H-1B visa, which was the hot topic of the day. So I perceived the discussion itself felt like a rejection for him. Now, this is a guy who they were threatening to jail. They were telling him if he came to certain countries, he'd be jailed. They've been taking his money illegally, money that he earned from having just incredible, ingenious ideas, and a contract that said, if the company does this, I earn that, and they don't want to give it to him. He's had death threats since he backed Trump. Enormous courage, deserves our respect, and I'm sure he felt betrayed and rejected, at least initially. Again, heightened state. And most of the people responding to him also were in a heightened state. They said, it is unfair for us to have to compete in the workforce against the entire world. Why can't Americans benefit off the country that we and our family and our ancestors built? Why do we always have to benefit foreigners who come in at the last minute? So it was getting quite hot. But they weren't thinking about something else. Those people taking those jobs do not just beam in and out to work like they're on a Star Trek episode. They have to be housed. They have to use roads and water and grocery stores and department stores and clothes. What about all of that? What about traffic? What about the sewer system? What about the crowds? What about local businesses? And you also have to ask yourself, are they spending the money they're making from this American company here, or are they sending a good part of it overseas so that Americans don't even benefit from it? One of the first things that came to mind. Did you guys think of that too? Let me know if you thought of it too. And they're bringing their families. Okay, so eat with or without their families. What about the core cultural norms? Does their culture fit with the US? Are there language issues? Are there conflicting religious practices, sexual norms? And I say that because some cultures allow their males to prey on non-group member women. So we have a huge problem all over Europe and Canada and even in parts of the US with predatory males from Islamic countries. And it's been going on as long as there's been immigration there. They're allowed to do that. Are we okay with that? What about their religious practices? If, we're talking about some people eating pets, cultural norms, religious practices, is that okay with us? What about the schools? They start to fill our schools with their families and their kids, their expectations. If there are language issues or behavioral issues, I've seen a lot of problems with cultures where women are very disrespected, that the teachers of the kids in these families are having serious problems because the majority of teachers in American schools are women. And these males have been brought up to believe they don't need to listen to women. So it causes a huge problem. Anybody thinking about any of this, and remember, if these people come over here and stay, this problem isn't just going to be for a few years. It's permanent. Also think about, how do they do their work? How do they behave? Some cultures say there's one rule for people within our culture as far as how we do business and honoring contracts. And there's another rule for outsiders. We have a country and a culture that says if you sign a contract, if you give your word, you're supposed to keep your word. What if you come from one of these countries or one of these cultures that doesn't say that? And also, are they willing to assimilate? It's not enough to acculturate, to pretend like you respect our culture like some of the cultures do. Are you willing to actually intermarry and become part of us so that in 2 generations, it's not really that noticeable? A lot of them aren't. They're not willing to acculturate. Not only that, They want to go back to their home country and get their spouse and other workers for the company, which continues to cut out Americans. It is a broad, wide issue. In social psychology, it's part of what we study as well, the flow out effect of a behavior or a norm or a rule or law, and the flow on. How does it transpire into the future? Any of you guys thought about that? Now, I apologize about this little slide. When I change it over to put it on here, it kind of changes things around a little bit. I do apologize. It says growth mindset. I have talked repeatedly about 2025 being your growth mindset year. So when you come up to a problem, you say, I can learn this, I can do this. If I'm willing to put the effort in and learn from my mistakes, I can learn anything, I can do anything. That way, when you encounter something challenging, all different parts of your brain are lighting up and you're able to keep going. And you're willing to consider new facts. You're willing to admit the mistake. So if somebody had a conflicting view and they come at you and you say, what do you want me to understand? What do you want me to hear? And they give you information, you're able to look at it. You're able and willing to look at it. You'll look it up. If it requires expertise you don't have, you'll look it up and say, okay, let me get some information on this. You don't feel threatened by it. When you have a growth mindset, you don't feel as threatened by conflicting information because you know that getting something wrong is not in any way casting aspersions on your ability. And in fact, being willing to get it wrong and correct your mistake is a sign of being smarter and having more ability. So you see it as something to do. Now, one of the things I noted, and if you follow me on X, you'll know I talk about this. The Democrats and the woke teach certain scripted responses to their followers. So when you do contradict something they say, they will often say, source. And when you offer them the source, they will find an excuse not to even look at it because they have been indoctrinated, and that is very threatened by conflicting information. So they don't want to look at it. They'll say, oh, but one of the 15 people on this study once wrote a paper where they didn't credit someone. So I can't read this study that you gave me, even though it's been praised and lauded as being rigorous and having important points. They'll find some excuse, or I'm not going to read that. You think I have time? Or, what are you doing? I get every excuse you can think of. When I respond to the request for a source, I actually give them one. I stopped doing it. I said, look it up. Do your research. Because when I took the time to find the sources, they found excuses not to look. And those of us with a growth mindset, and I want everybody watching this, all 1,683 people right now, I want you to say in 2025, I'm going to have a growth mindset. All it takes is you to flip a switch in your brain that says, when I come across new information, I'm willing to learn it. I am not threatened by information that contradicts what I already believe. I will look it up. I will do my research. And if they make valid points, I will correct myself. I'll correct my course. Now, sometimes, because I know that we tend to be like that anyway, those of us on our side, we tend to look stuff up. I know I'm always looking things up and going straight to the methodology page. And I spent 7 years of my 9 years of university learning research analysis and advanced statistics. So I will look at the methodology and see if it's solid. Their methodology is terrible for the most part. But I still look. Because if they hand me a study that's solid, then I'm going to examine it and reconsider my position. However, we're talking today about how to handle this. Be gracious if you're correct. If the facts are on your side, be gracious. Now, gracious doesn't mean weak. You don't back down and say, well, it doesn't really matter. Everybody has a view. Don't do that mealy-mouthed girly thing. And I say girly because a lot of women have been brought up to be conciliatory all the time. And so even when they're right and the point is important, they'll semi back down because they don't want the other person to feel bad. The other person's going to have to deal with facts. So you don't pretend just to spare their feelings, but you don't bully them or tease them about the fact that you were right and they were wrong, because next time they could have a valid point and you need to back down. And it's never okay to bully. Never okay to bully. You don't bully people. You don't threaten people, especially if you're in a position of power and authority and you know who I'm talking to. You do not threaten people. And I would say here, 2025, let's not waste our time. Don't argue with anyone who won't admit they missed something or made a mistake. Now, I'm not saying some topics might not be a little sensitive for them to admit. I don't mean about one specific topic. I mean somebody in general that no matter what it is they do, if they make a mistake, they never admit it. Don't waste your time on those individuals. Find a common topic to talk about. Don't talk about the controversial stuff with them, because it's just going to drive you crazy that they will never admit they're wrong. And please, tip number 8, don't easily sacrifice a relationship due to differing viewpoints. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I'm talking to all of you who are willing to throw away Elon. We do not want to throw away Elon Musk. He has sacrificed, he has contributed so much. He's going into the history books. We do not want to throw him away because he got mad at us about something. Actually, in some ways, sometimes somebody demonstrating they're actually mad at you is a compliment. And he should take the fact that we would argue with him as both a compliment that we trust that he can handle it, and a sign we are not a cult. Cult members never argue with their leaders. They're not allowed to. We're not a cult. So, and weigh it up. Ask yourself, do you have more values in common, more benefits? Then keep the relationship. If you have more pros than cons, keep the relationship. I've mentioned many times that a very close friend of mine is a woke Democrat. She does incredible work. She's a very caring person. She makes me laugh. We share values about helping people really lift themselves up. She's wonderful. And so we just stay away from the controversial stuff because I don't want to lose her. Her friendship is very valuable to me. Tip number 9, last tip. It's okay not to discuss topics that are going to lead to arguments. If you know that talking about something is going to lead to arguments, it's okay to stay away from it. Now, I don't know how many of you are signed in on X, but if you sign in on X, you should be able to give me a question or a comment. Same on Facebook. Sign in and give me a question or comment. This topic itself is so important because in order for us to get the most out of this change in regime, and which is really going to be a cultural change that's going to sweep the planet, we need to be able to discuss topics that we care about, not just the light stuff. Now, I said don't discuss topics that lead to arguments. Sometimes, if you're building something together, you will have to discuss topics that lead to arguments. And that's where the tips that I gave at the top are going to be especially useful. When you have a self-assessment, your first step when somebody says something you don't agree with is a self-assessment. You ask yourself, where did I feel that? Is that impacting me physically? Does it, do I become enraged? Is there like a red wave behind my eyes? Am I ready to, attack them? Now realize if you get a red wave when somebody says something, it means that whatever they said is making you feel seriously threatened. And you need to pay attention to that. If you feel threatened, that's not the time to discuss it with them. You can even say, look, I'm too emotional to talk about this right now. But I want to hear what you have to say. I want to understand the points you're making. Let me go for a walk. Let me just calm myself down for an hour, and then we can come back and discuss it. Now, you'll notice when I talked about all the heated arguments that we had around legal immigration, there were major points that weren't even in the argument. People were getting all heated about what happens in the workplace. But what about what happens in society? Every country that hasn't paid attention to that has paid an enormously high price. You look at Europe, you look at Canada, they have opened the doors to massive immigration to people who don't share their culture, who don't share their norms, often don't share their language. And Australia has done this as well. Australia is now filled with people who don't speak the language, don't share the culture, and many of whom are using the Australian economy as a way to benefit themselves and their families financially, but they have no respect for the people there. They have no respect for the culture. For me, living in different places as a Black woman, people from hot countries tend to tell me what they really think. So when I run across Africans and Muslims in Europe or Australia or New Zealand, they tend to tell me what they really think about the natives, about the whites that have built the country. And a lot of it is not good. I think a lot of people would be very stricken to know how much they're disrespected by the people that they have moved over to allow entry and have made effort to make them feel comfortable. And even think about language differences. I know that when I was living in Los Angeles, I was working for the Superior Court in the domestic violence department. And I noted that language was used often as a method of control for men from patriarchal cultures. So they would make a million excuses why their wife shouldn't learn English. So I was constantly dealing with women, Korean women, Chinese women, Hispanic women, who couldn't even say my baby is sick or where is the emergency room or can you call the police? They didn't even have that much English. And their men told them you only want to learn English to meet other men. So one of the things I was trying to do is to get the state to start offering women-only language classes. Now, here's another point here. If you had women-only language courses with all of the concessions currently being made to trans-identifying males, would these women be allowed to attend? Because these men would insist on participating, or they'd have a temper tantrum and make a big deal of it. That's one of the things I'm hoping will happen with this new regime in Washington, because America influences the world. And we have tried to be nice for too long. And instead of being really nice, we've just made ourselves weak and unprotected. There's a certain level of niceness nobody can afford because it's taken advantage of by predators. Maybe my attitude is a little different because I work regularly with predators. So I know how they think. I've had in-depth interviews with more than 700, with 700 of them that are confidential until death. And their attitude towards people who allow themselves to be manipulated is horrendous. They look at that and say, oh, they're weak, I can take advantage. That includes law enforcement, that includes the judiciary, people's families, people in the workplace. So one of the things that we need to get used to, I think you got some good tips today on how to discuss topics without ruining the relationship. Go into it saying, I do not want to ruin this relationship. Let's figure out how we can discuss this hot topic without destroying our relationship. And if you find yourself getting heated, you find yourself going into a heightened state, you calm things down, you say, okay, let me just go for a walk and reflect on what's happened so far. You do whatever you can to stay calm enough to discuss it if it's important. But you also do not allow anyone to take advantage of you. Sometimes the other person has to hear no without you apologizing for it. And sometimes you're going to have to take no for an answer too. And you're just going to have to accept it. None of us get everything we want all the time. We formed a big cooperative coalition to get Trump back into office because we saw our country being destroyed, purposely destroyed, speed. And we said, we can't do this. But part of having a large coalition of people is that not all of them think exactly the same. And we're going to have to find out which goals are a priority. We're going to have to live with those goals. We're going to have to reach those goals without destroying the relationship and without compromising our values. You know, they say someone's got to win, someone's got to lose. No, let's abandon that too. That win-lose zero-sum thinking is the root of all evil. Let's find out something where everybody compromises something and nobody totally loses. Let's see if we can make that happen. And keep in mind as well, there are millions of Democrats that are Americans too. So we can't just say, hey, Trump won, we don't have to do anything, we don't have to live with them. I'm very concerned. I've done 2 shows about my concern about especially Democrat women going to the absolute extremes in protests to the Trump victory. Our society does not benefit from that. We need to get people back on board. We need to get them thinking. We need to get them beyond their indoctrination so they actually have critical thinking again. Because even if you learned about critical thinking is, again, neocortex, problem-solving part of the brain. You can have great critical thinking. But if the rest of your brain is indoctrinated, that critical thinking is not going to do you much good because it's not going to be used. Remember, the subconscious, unconscious minds, the limbic brain, the emotions, the primal drives make 88 to 95% of our choices. So if we are not using our critical mind to protect our other parts of our brain, to protect our brain from indoctrination, manipulation, brainwashing, our decisions will suffer. So I'm hoping you will all follow me on X, or if you go on Daily Clout or you go on Facebook, the Daily Clout Facebook page, write me a little note with a question, a suggestion. If any of you want to come on the show, I can have up to 10 people at a time. You can ask me anything. I want to thank you for joining me here today. And that is my website. You can find out my books, my programs. You can even hire me on my website, www.drdinamcmillan.com. So I know a lot of you are out going out for the holidays. The number dropped dramatically. I think one of the sites dropped. But I'm hoping you'll join me again next week next Tuesday on Heart and Mind, where we discuss another important topic that's designed around you. I'll see you then.